tomatoes. They're in pizza, pasta, ketchup, but what if I told you they were once considered a deadly poison? The story of the tomato doesn't start in Europe. It begins in the markets of the Aztec Empire, centuries before Europeans even knew this fruit existed. The Aztecs were cultivating tomatoes as early as 700 AD. They called them tomatl. Mayans, please correct my pronunciation. And they weren't just eating them. They were using them in stews, salsas, and drinks. The Spanish, always on the lookout for new things to steal, trade, brought tomatoes back to Europe in the 1500s after colonizing Mexico. But when the Spanish brought them home, something strange happened. Okay, imagine you're a 16th century European noble. You've never seen this bright red fruit before. It looks exotic, foreign, maybe even suspicious.
In 1544, the Italian botanist Pietro Andrea Mattioli
was one of the first Europeans to describe tomatoes.
He called them pomidoro, golden apples.
But even he wasn't sure they were safe to eat. Early European accounts filled with confusion.
Some thought tomatoes were medicinal, others thought they were toxic. A British colonialist tried to prove they were safe by eating a whole basket of them in public. So for over 200 years, Europeans grew tomatoes only as decorations. They refused to eat them. Some even believed that tomatoes could drive you mad. But why?
There were three reasons: science, superstition, and really bad dinnerware.
Tomatoes belong to the Nightshade family, which, let's be honest, sounds like a medieval death cult. It includes some truly deadly plants like belladonna and henbane. I don't know how to pronounce that, I can't find that anywhere. And to be fair, tomato plants do contain a compound called tomatine, which technically can be toxic, but you'd have to eat about 200 tomatoes in one sitting to feel any effect. At that point, the tomatoes aren't the problem, you are. Rich Europeans who ate tomatoes actually did get sick, but not because of the tomato. The real culprit? Lead poisoning. Back then, aristocrats ate off pewter plates, which contained high amounts of lead. Tomatoes are acidic, and when they touch these plates, they pull lead into the food. The result? Dizziness, nausea, and sometimes death. So let's get this straight. The tomato was innocent. It was the plates that were poisoning people.
You're still here, so you clearly enjoyed that, but we both know you're not going to subscribe after the video, so let's do it together now. In 3, 2, 1, click!
But did anyone blame their fancy tableware? Nope, it was all the tomatoes' fault. Meanwhile, peasants who ate off wooden bowls had no issue, which means technically the only thing killing people was being rich. And then things got even weirder. Some people thought tomatoes didn't just poison you, they could make you go insane. Rumours spread that tomatoes cause hallucinations, paranoia, and violent behaviour. In France, people started calling them poison apples. In Italy, some believed tomatoes caused madness. Now, slowly, the myths started to crumble. Poor people, especially in Spain and Italy, kept eating tomatoes and mysteriously not dropping dead. By the 17th century, some Mediterranean cooks started taking chances with tomatoes, but it would still take over 100 more years before they were fully accepted. But one dish changed everything, and no, it wasn't pizza yet. What was the first real dish cooked with tomatoes? Like most food trends, it didn't happen all at once. But the earliest recipes give us a clear picture of how tomatoes went from a curiosity to a cornerstone of European cuisine. It makes sense that Spain and Italy were the first to adopt tomatoes. Both were heavily involved in trade with the Americas, and both had climates that tomatoes thrived in. By the late 1600s, the first recorded European tomato recipe appears, salsa de tomate, found in an Italian cookbook by Antonio Latini in 1692. Latini's version of tomato sauce was simple: tomatoes, onions, oil, salt, and spices. But it was a game changer. It was the first recorded European recipe that treated tomatoes as food, not decoration. Meanwhile, in Naples, tomatoes had arrived even earlier.
Sailors brought them back from the Americas in the 1500s, but at first they were mostly used in stews and sauces rather than eaten raw. By the 1700s, tomatoes were slowly becoming common in southern Italian cooking. And by the late 18th century, Naples had a dish that would change everything. Neapolitans took tomatoes and made them into the street food of the century. Early pizza wasn't the cheese-covered delivery box version we know today. It was a simple, cheap food for the working class. Flatbread topped with oil, garlic, and whatever was available. But once tomatoes became part of the picture, that's when pizza exploded. By the early 1800s, pizzerias in Naples were selling hot, fresh pizza with tomato sauce, cheese, and basil. And in 1889, the most famous pizza of all time was born. Pizza Margherita. According to legend, a Neapolitan chef made a pizza for Queen Margherita of Savoy using tomatoes, mozzarella, and basil to match the colours of the Italian flag. By the late 19th century, pizza had already taken over Naples, and from there, it spread worldwide. Meanwhile, in France, things moved a little slower. Even in the 1700s, some French aristocrats still thought tomatoes were suspicious. But by the time tomatoes hit Provence, that changed fast. The Mediterranean climate made them easy to grow, and French chefs started using tomatoes in rustic stews and fish dishes. Think bouillabaisse, ratatouille, and Provençal sauces. By the early 19th century, tomatoes were fully integrated into European cooking, appearing in Italian ragout, Spanish gazpacho, and even refined French cuisine. Something very different was happening in America. By the early 1800s, American cooks had started experimenting with tomato ketchup. At first, ketchup wasn't even sweet. It was a spiced, vinegary sauce, closer to Worcestershire sauce. It was actually originally Chinese. The transition to the sugary ketchup we know today, that's a whole other story. Tomatoes went from being feared as poison to becoming one of the most important ingredients in the world. For 200 years, tomatoes were considered dangerous. Even today, some people still think they're bad for you. Ever heard of the Nightshade panic? Some diet gurus swear tomatoes, potatoes, and peppers cause inflammation and even toxicity. So, is there any truth to it, or is this just another case of history repeating itself? Please tell me in the comments, let's talk about it.
And whatever the case, we eat 180 million tons a year.
By the 18th century, tomatoes had finally earned their place in European kitchens. But how did they go from a once feared fruit to one of the most consumed ingredients on Earth? The answer? Trade, empire, and food obsession. Spain spread tomatoes across its empire, taking them to the Philippines, where they entered Asian cuisine, think tomato-based Filipino stews. From the Philippines, tomatoes travelled to China and India, where they were absorbed into curries and stir-fries. Portuguese traders carried tomatoes to Africa, where they became a key ingredient in West African dishes like jollof rice. And in the Middle East, tomatoes revolutionized dishes like shakshuka and stews. So, in just a few hundred years, this deadly fruit became a global superstar, shaping cuisines from Mexico to Mumbai and beyond.
So what's the next tomato? What food do we fear today that might be totally normal in 100 years? GMOs? Lab-grown meat? Insects? Drop your guesses in the comments. Thank you for joining me. I love you all wherever you are. Go and have a tomato or a tomato-based dish if you can stomach it, or if you aren't sick of tomatoes now. Everyone, put in the comments, what do you like to cook with tomatoes? I mean, the options are endless. Tell me if anybody has felt a bit mad after eating a tomato. That's also interesting. Throw some recipes around. Tell me what you like to cook. I'll read every comment and I'll respond to every comment. Throw in the comments what you might like me to explore next. And please subscribe to Bread and Potatoes and join me in exploring the real stories behind what we eat.
Oh, and hey guys, check out my Patreon. It would be an honor to see you there, and you're going to get all sorts of amazing goodies, and we'll be supporting this work. Thank you so much.